Al Jazeera podcasts.
Today, the elephant in the room is a cow.
Just to produce a hamburger, beef burger, requires 3,000 liters of water.
The food sector is 30 years behind the fossil fuel sector in terms of addressing it as an issue.
The growing movement championing a plant-based diet. I'm Kevin Hirten, and this is The Take. They say you are what you eat, and most people, myself included, are omnivores. But are omnivores paying attention to the toll it takes on the planet and the climate just to feed ourselves? Well, the answer, says Anita Krajnc, is no, we are not.
The food sector is going to take us past the 1.52 degrees Celsius target.
Just on its own.
On its own.
Yeah.
Forget about fossil fuels, just on its own.
Anita is the global campaign coordinator for the Plant-Based Treaty. She's based in Toronto, where she's been helping to lead a growing movement to endorse a plant-based diet. It has more than 200,000 endorsers. Now, it's a non-binding treaty, but over time, these small changes, activists hope, can really add up.
Some scientists say that avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to reduce an individual's environmental impact on the planet, as animal-based foods create about twice the emissions as plant-based foods.
Anita, I want to start by just defining the scope of the problem, right? Some of the numbers here are really shocking.
About 15% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from animal farming. Methane, the product of bovine belching and flatulence, is 30 times more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping atmospheric heat.
Just how much of a factor does the meat industry play in climate change?
The meat industry is a leading cause of climate change. At the last COP at the United Emirates, it was announced that a third of the greenhouse gases come from the food sector, and a majority of those come from meat, dairy, and eggs. There's also the methane crisis. So methane is one of the three main greenhouse gases alongside carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide. And a third of methane emissions come from the meat sector. When it comes to climate change, fossil fuels account only for 2/3 of the problem, but a whole third of the problem has been neglected.
But wait, there's more, because where this issue, I think, stands apart is that it has this double impact. Curtailing animal agriculture would also have benefits that go far beyond just cutting emissions. It's also really good for the earth, right?
Absolutely. So what's interesting about fossil fuels is it impacts the climate. But if you look at the food sector, it impacts the majority of the planetary boundaries.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the planetary boundaries for our listeners who aren't familiar?
A planetary boundary is something that you need to protect for the long-term survival of life. So what are the most important boundaries? So climate change is one, but also there's freshwater use, phosphorus and nitrogen, ozone, the ozone layer. 6 of the 9 boundaries have already been breached, mainly because of animal agriculture.
According to a new study, human activity has now gone past 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries that are important for maintaining the stability and resilience of Earth as a place conducive to human welfare.
And land use is, some people say it's the number one environmental issue. So, for example, if you look at all the farmland used to grow food for humans and animals, of all the farmland, 83% of the farmland is used for animal agriculture, yet it produces only 18% of the calories.
Wow.
So it's very inefficient. So we are felling forests, rainforests, in the Amazon to grow animal feed for chickens in China and Europe.
The world's biggest rainforest, the Amazon, has lost an area the size of Germany and France combined to deforestation in 4 decades.
So it's when you look at food, if you address the food issue, you not only address climate change, but you help protect the other planetary boundaries.
Just out of curiosity, what would happen if the whole world went vegan tomorrow? Is the world really equipped to support a fully plant-based diet right now?
Yes, because think about how many people live on the planet. Is it around 8 billion? How many farmed animals live on the planet and are killed each year? What would you guess?
How many farmed animals are killed each year?
Or yes, that live on the land. We're not talking fish and marine species.
Let's say 10 million.
or you were a billion, you mean? Or
A billion, sure. I have no frame of reference at all.
yeah. Okay. So there are way more farmed animals on the planet than humans. So there are 8 billion humans, but there
Of
are
course,
way more
yes.
farmed animals. So like 92 billion farmed animals. So to answer your question about what would happen, we would no longer have to feed 92 billion farmed animals each year,
Right.
and instead could focus on feeding all humans so that there wouldn't be, almost a billion people that are hungry every year. We could reforest. So we could reforest 3/4 of farmland. So currently, and I'm sorry to use so many figures, but this one is an important one.
That's what we're here for.
Okay. So there's globally 4 billion hectares are used for farmland. 4 billion hectares. A large part of the Earth's surface is used for farming. So animal feed and grazing land. 4 billion. If everybody went plant-based, we would only need 1 billion.
Wow.
Can you imagine
Wow.
reforesting 3 billion hectares and feeding everyone? So, and there, because right now there's more farmed animals than wildlife by weight. It's really heartbreaking and tragic.
Wow.
So like we could then bring back biodiversity and have carbon sinks. As you mentioned, like if we could reforest the earth, we would have a much bigger carbon sink and could address the climate crisis that way as well.
Man, it sounds like the solution is right there in front of us.
Exactly.
Okay. We wanted to learn how Anita and others are cooking up ways to start implementing their solutions around the world. In Barcelona, Juan Pablo Casadiego coordinates the plant-based treaty. He's made a plant-based diet his life's work.
So the plant-based treaty is grassroots movement. We call it kind of a social movement that was started from activists from Animal Safe movement.
The Plant-Based Treaty Initiative is a grassroots campaign designed to put food systems at the forefront of combating the climate crisis.
So we don't advocate for veganism. That is more like the philosophy behind refraining yourself from animal exploitation, but it's for food. And we want it to be a global treaty that accompanies the Paris Agreement from 2015. We're working on those negotiations at the political level, but we're also working on the streets. So it's a street level campaign. And what we do is to generate pressures on governments, politicians, the councillors, each of our cities. So you as citizen can endorse the treaty, say, okay, recognize that animal agriculture is a major driver of climate change. And you somehow personally also commit to a change, if you can do it.
Our COP29 demand is very simple. We are asking nations to begin negotiating for a global plant-based treaty to add to the UN Paris Climate Agreement to address 1/3 of emissions from the food systems.
So we have, at the moment, around 30 cities around the world starting to take political action or regulations to transform their food systems.
We ask you, the LA Council members, to make history again to help reverse the climate crisis by voting yes on this resolution.
Along with Los Angeles and Barcelona, other cities include Amsterdam in the Netherlands and Edinburgh in Scotland. So, how does it work? It's not like all the restaurants in the city will suddenly go vegan overnight.
Policies need to adapt to people's culture and habits. But for example, what we have done and we have pushed for is small changes. And this is a transition. That's why we have to keep it in mind. So we can start with small targets. So let's start, for example, it's targeting universities or public schools, and then put 1 or 2 days a week a fully plant-based meal in a cafeteria, or doing the same in a public hospital or in a prison. So in different organizations, we can start promoting diet. Then if you have, 100 public schools in New York, and then 100 in Los Angeles, Barcelona, then it's a big change in the end. And also, we need a lot of money to do the change. The dairy and meat industry receive a lot of subsidies from governments. So why are we sending our money from our taxes to an industry that degenerates our health and the planet's health? So that's why we're also asking for more funding and redirecting those funds.
So, how to get there? Anita will explain after the break. So, okay, let's talk about solutions then. Let's talk about the plant-based treaty. How does the treaty work? How is it structured?
We got our inspiration from the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty.
We are urging governments to negotiate a global treaty which will include the following 3 principles. The 3 R's: relinquish, redirect, and restore.
The first principle is relinquish, don't make the problem worse. So no new deforestation for expanded animal agriculture. The second principle is redirect. So redirect our policies in terms of subsidies, taxes, regulations, public information campaigns, so that we can support a transition towards a plant-based food system and rewild the earth. And then the third principle is restore. And that's about reforesting, the mangroves, the rainforests, and also increasing land equity and food security. And so our mission, what our vision is a global treaty that would accompany the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, and that would be Paris. That would make the food system Paris-aligned.
Right.
So that's the vision, and we have a second vision, which is local action. So we encourage local action on the part of cities and institutions.
Very cool. It sounds like your theory of change is to collect endorsements from individuals, groups, businesses, and cities, and then put pressure on states to negotiate this global treaty.
Yes. See, this bottom-up pressure is crucial,
Yeah.
and it's happened in other social movements, like the initiative to ban landmines, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Those incredible global treaties started with local initiatives.
Yeah. Bottom-up pressure. Yeah. So Anita, what do you say to people who want to have more plants in their diet, but it's too expensive, or they live in neighborhoods where it's just not realistic to get these kind of vegetable options, vegetarian meals?
I think some cities are looking into providing food security and encouraging, community gardens and vouchers for, low-income areas. So I think, there is a role for government in ensuring that there aren't food deserts and that fruits and vegetables are available everywhere. So I just encourage your listeners to explore plant-based foods.
Okay, well, then I do want to follow up on that, because I do want to know what people listening to this can do. And I ask this because I know some people feel a bit burned by the environmental era of personal responsibility. This notion that the earth is dying because you're not recycling your newspapers was something that governments were promoting while they were subsidizing polluters or big ag or car makers making SUVs, right? But it does seem that voting with your plate is different. It's because it's so personal and it's every day. What is your advice to people listening? Do they have to go vegan tomorrow, or is there a more gradual state they can go into? How do you think it works?
I just want to start with a survey. There was like a People's Climate Vote survey, multiple countries, biggest climate survey ever. And they asked for how do you rank 18 solutions? And going plant-based is actually the number one thing you could do at an individual level, but it was ranked at the bottom. So
wow.
We need to educate people, and that's what we're trying to do, so that it starts, that people see how much power they have, by voting with their plate, or, trying to help the environment with their plate. So 100%, in this case, individual action is important, and there's so much you can do, but individual action is also like, you could write a letter to your counselors to support the plant-based treaty. So I think it's both. It's individual and policy change. And as individuals, you can do both. And it's, do you have to go, vegan tomorrow? I think a lot of people are muddlers. Like, it's step by step. They might try meat-free Mondays and then add Fridays, or and then eventually, in their home they won't eat, meat, dairy, and eggs. So there's so many resources out there to help you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the developed, sort of in the West, in the global North, that would like to have more plants in their diet. It's just very expensive. It's very difficult in many, many neighborhoods. Is there anything that you've looked into that can talk about, getting more equitable diets to people who want this?
That's a great question. In a time where a lot of people are facing a cost of living crisis, high inflation.
Prices are rising and it hurts.
Inflation above 11%.
That is clearly the highest figure in 40 years.
So the best thing to do is move towards a more whole food, plant-based diet. It's healthier, it's more nutritious, and it's much cheaper. So, so many countries have incredible recipes for lentils, and in some countries, it's part of their daily staple diet. Think of, dal in India. Think of, lentil soup in Brazil. They're just like, it's endless. Like you can make a lasagna instead of using beef. You could just use lentils as the protein. So I think there's so many, you can veganize different cuisines. And there's so many recipes out there.
This vegan burrito bowl is going to be your new favorite healthy, high-protein lunch.
This is Sarí as a vegan personal trainer that are high in plant protein. This is episode 3, quick red lentil and chickpea bowl containing over 40 grams of plant protein per serve.
I'm so excited to share these super fudgy vegan brownies with you.
So I would recommend, as individuals that, we change what we eat on our plates, but we also write to our counselors and try to influence menus at restaurants and at schools and hospitals. There's so much we can do. We have a lot of power. We just need to exercise it.
Wow. Anita Krajnc, Global Campaign Coordinator at Plant-Based Treaty. Thank you so much for coming on The Take.
Thanks so much, Kevin. And if you don't mind, please endorse the Plant-Based Treaty on our homepage, plantbasedtreaty.org, and I invite all your listeners to endorse it.
And that's The Take. Now we want to hear about you. What does your diet look like? Have you ever thought about going plant-based? Oh, and while you're at it, if you're short on time, but you still want to check out the highlights, look at our YouTube shorts. We post quick clips with the best moments from our episodes that you won't want to miss. And it's a great way to stay connected. So check those out, and we will see you tomorrow.